We're always told that moving forward means hoarding our time, obsessing over tomorrow, and constantly bracing for the future. But what if I told you there's a group of people who never once worried about a schedule, yet they've survived for tens of thousands of years? They haven't collapsed. They haven't lost their identity. Honestly, maybe we're the ones who have it all backwards. You don't need a textbook to get this. You just need to walk in their shoes for one single day. One era, food split among friends, and a life completely untouched by the clock. This is the story of the Hadzabe tribe. And trust me, you need to hear this. These guys don't sit around mapping out a hunt like you think. They literally read the wild, relying purely on raw instinct and deep knowledge built up over countless years. One of the hunters drops to a crouch. He brushes his fingers against some kicked-up dirt, and this faint, knowing smirk crosses his face. A wild boar came through here. Recently, too. Not a single word is spoken. Nobody is barking orders. I instantly force myself to slow down, terrified of snapping a dry twig. My chest is pounding, but not from panic. It feels more like I'm truly waking up for the very first time. Suddenly, the target is right there. It happens in a flash. The bowstring snaps, and the arrow hits its mark with absolute, lethal precision. But there is no cheering, no high fives. It's a heavy, grounding moment. They understand that taking a life carries a massive weight. Out here, killing an animal isn't some trophy to brag about. It's just what it takes to stay alive. We're moving past a shallow watering hole, when the whole vibe just shifts. The birds go dead silent. The breeze dies down. One of the Hadzabe abruptly freezes. Way off in the distance, there's a hippo, completely still. You don't feel this crazy, panicked tension, but nobody is making a move toward it either. To them, that massive beast isn't a target. It's nature's ultimate warning sign to back off. The crew just pivots, quietly slipping away in the opposite direction. Knowing when to walk away is just as crucial for survival as the hunt itself. That's when it hits me. The Hadzabe aren't out here trying to dominate the wild. They survive because they know exactly when to yield. You don't have to conquer everything you cross paths with. You don't always have to flex your power. And for these guys, a hunt rarely stops at just bringing back meat. The wild always has a backup plan for keeping its people fed. On our way back to base, we halt under this towering tree. One of the guys points straight up at a massive beehive. They actually team up with this specific honey guide bird to find it. It's this ancient, wild partnership. The bird leads the way, the guys harvest the honey, and whatever is left behind goes right back to the earth. They spark up a quick fire to smoke the bees out, scaling that huge trunk like it's absolutely nothing. Right then and there, they start passing around chunks of honeycomb. The way they share it is so seamless, you honestly can't even tell who's handing it out and who's taking it. Everybody just gets exactly what they need. You bite into it, and this intense, smoky sweetness just coats your whole mouth. The kids are swarming around, hands completely sticky, just laughing their heads off. Nobody is hoarding a secret stash for later. Everything is split perfectly even. Not because some law says they have to, but because this is just in their blood. As the sun starts dipping below the horizon, the whole energy shifts. The hustle of the hunt fades into this shared communal feast. The meat gets prepped without any fuss. No fancy cooking gear, just an open fire, a couple of blades, and techniques passed down through hundreds of generations. They roast everything right in the dirt and carve it up on the spot. And get this, nobody fights for the prime cut. Nobody demands to eat first. I'm sitting there by the flames, just staring at the hunter's scarred hands, literal battle wounds from the wild, and a lifetime of survival. The entire camp goes dead quiet as they cook. Honestly, it feels way more like a sacred ritual than just a regular dinner. In that heavy silence, it clicks. I'm taking in something way deeper than just their diet. I find myself chewing slower, taking my time, not because anyone told me to, but because the whole atmosphere is practically forcing me to hit the brakes on my own brain. I didn't walk away with some massive, preachy life lesson, but when I flash back to the chilling calm in the hunter's eyes after that kill shot, or those kids cracking up with sticky fingers, I can literally feel the tension leaving my own body. It feels like in just 24 hours I figured out how to tune into the wild, and honestly, into myself.
This route is
we live
bitter,
in a society that is constantly obsessed with asking,
we need to find
what
more
else can we take?
before we move the herd
Hadzabe only
towards
seem
the
to
high
ask
ground.
one thing. Yeah. Seriously, think about it. What actually happens when you wake up to no blaring alarm, zero electricity, absolutely no cell service, and nowhere you need to be? Just bare feet, hitting the dirt, breathing in sync with the pulse of the Tanzanian savanna. The Hadzabe have held it down like this for tens of thousands of years. So the real question isn't about what they are missing out on, it is about how much useless garbage we are carrying around in our own lives. And that's it. The tribe wakes up the exact second there's just enough light to barely make out the tip of an arrow. There's no morning commute, no rushing to school. The grown-ups grab their bows, while the kids bring something else, entirely pure curiosity. And get this, nobody is asking what's for dinner. With this tribe, you literally only eat what you can catch. They don't hoard a single bite. Not because they don't know how, but because in a tight-knit group, hoarding breeds competition. And out here, competition will straight up destroy your chances of surviving. The wilderness itself is their only fridge.
Yes, finally.
No wells,
we found it.
No running water. They're tracking down hydration in rock cracks, tree roots, or even elephant footprints that manage to hold on to a little rain. That water? It is strictly for drinking. In a landscape this unforgiving, hydration isn't some luxury, it's absolute survival. While the savanna is still dead quiet, we veer off onto this incredibly narrow dirt path hugging the riverbed. Nobody says a word, but the whole crew slows down. The energy completely shifts. One of the hunters suddenly stops dead in his tracks, throws up a hand, and everyone just freezes. There's no obvious warning sign, just pure instinct. They inch closer to the edge, barely breathing. And there it is, a massive, motionless body resting in the mud. A full-grown crocodile. Not a single bow gets drawn. Nobody panics or backs away. They all instantly know the deal, this guy isn't on the menu. It's not a hunt, and it's not a desperate scramble for their lives either. It is just this raw moment where humanity isn't trying to dominate the wild, and the wild isn't trying to tear them apart. A few tense minutes pass, and we just move on. The croc stays put. The hunt picks back up, serving up another brutal but beautiful lesson from the bush. Not every standoff has to end with a winner and a loser. Once the threat is in the rear view, it's basically back to business as usual, and the crew pushes way deeper into the brush. These guys are reading the dirt like it's the morning paper. They're clocking how deep a footprint goes, checking out fresh droppings, spotting tiny tufts of fur snagged on thorn bushes. You know what they found? The unmistakable trail of a wildcat. We're talking about an African wildcat, insanely fast, hyper-aware, and a total nightmare to trap. One of the hunters draws his bow back. No hand gestures, absolutely zero chatter. The arrow just rips through the air. The silence afterward feels heavier than the actual shot. The cat goes down, but there's no cheering, no high fives. It isn't a trophy, it's dinner. In their world, landing a kill doesn't make you some kind of superhero. It just means you're the guy stepping up to keep everyone fed today. Think about this. No classrooms, no textbooks, yet these kids can easily spot dozens of different bird species. They know exactly which hives are loaded with honey and which ones will absolutely wreck you. They can read tracks that either lead to a meal or a straight-up death trap. They're out there taking down small birds, rodents, bush babies, and literally tanking bee stings just to score some wild honey. Nobody calls them, and nobody tells them to stop. The adults just hang back and watch, only stepping in if things go totally sideways. Out here, education is literally just existing, and growing up means learning how to pull your own weight, step by step. When there's meat, it gets divided up, right on the spot. Nobody takes a bigger cut. Nobody sneaks a stash for later. Being a killer shot doesn't make you the boss. It only means one thing tonight. Everybody eats. Keep in mind, this tribe has zero access to doctors or modern pharmacies. But science actually backs this up. Obesity is practically non-existent for them. Diabetes is incredibly rare, and heart disease is basically unheard of. They are always on the move, eating whatever the current season provides. And the moment the sun drops, they rest. Sure, they face hardcore, life or death risks every day, brutal injuries, wild infections, extreme weather. Meanwhile, we've got top-tier hospitals, elite schools, and endless tech. Yet modern life somehow leaves us wide awake at 2 in the morning, totally stressed out, and battling this weird, nagging feeling of emptiness. They don't deal with any of that mental baggage. What they do have is an insanely deep bond with their people and the dirt beneath their feet. They aren't just scraping by out there. They are genuinely thriving on their own terms. Every single night, as it gets dark, they gather around the fire. No glowing screens, no crazy tall tales, just the sound of the wind, the crackle of the flames, and the feeling of a hard day completely finished. It makes you wonder if true civilization isn't about constantly pushing for more, but finally figuring out when enough is actually enough. Look, deep in a totally remote region of Tanzania, miles away from any highways or skyscrapers, where there is absolutely zero margin for error. This tribe is holding down a way of life that hasn't really changed in tens of thousands of years. Imagine owning absolutely nothing. No property, no stuff, just you, the wild, and the raw survival skills inside your head. Meet the Hadzabe. They're literally one of the very last true hunter-gatherer tribes left on the entire planet. Every single choice they make, it's driven by this incredibly deep connection to the earth, the wildlife, and the shifting seasons. They don't have technology to fall back on. Their survival comes down to pure instinct and wisdom handed down over countless generations. Before the sun even comes up, the camp wakes up in total silence. They sleep in these super basic shelters made of woven branches, wild grass, and animal skins. Now, it's time to prep for the hunt. You watch the guys meticulously checking their hand-carved bows and arrows. And these aren't just regular arrows. They lace the tips with a potent, natural toxin pulled straight from the forest plants. To them, an arrow isn't just a weapon. It's a literal masterpiece of survival, built on hundreds of years of trial, error, and absolute perfection. Crafting and firing these things, it demands flawless precision. You have to know exactly which plants are lethal, nail the exact dosage, and then expertly track down your target after the hit. Because if you mess up that dosage, you don't just lose your kill. You are literally throwing away an entire day of vital food and survival for the whole tribe. See, out here, hunting isn't about bragging rights or brute strength. It's an absolute masterclass in patience and hyper-awareness. They read the dirt like a book, a faint footprint, a snapped twig, the quietest rustle in the brush. They're listening to the birds, tuning in to every tiny shift in the wind. Every single thing around them speaks to them. Every tiny detail matters. One wrong move, you burn precious energy. Or worse, you put your own life on the line. Then, suddenly a shift in the air. Out in the distance, a massive antelope steps into view. The bowstring pulls tight. Now, that poisoned arrow won't drop it instantly. Instead, the animal might bolt and run for hours before exhaustion finally takes it down. But the hunters don't panic or sprint after it. They take it slow. They just follow the trail. They wait. Because in this world, staying alive is never a sprint. It's a marathon. Every now and then, things get incredibly intense. They'll cross paths with one of the deadliest beasts in all of Africa, the Cape buffalo. These things are completely unpredictable, lightning fast, and they will charge the second they feel cornered. With a buffalo, you get zero margin for error. You slip up, you're done. Then the dry season hits, and water becomes liquid gold. The rivers completely dry up, and the earth just cracks open under this brutal, unforgiving sun. What looks like a barren, cracked wasteland is really just a dried-out riverbed. But the tribe knows a secret. Life is hiding just a few feet under that burning sand. Reading the landscape, they start digging. And right there, just below the surface, fresh groundwater slowly starts pooling out. As the day starts fading out, the hunting party heads back to camp. They spark up a fire the old-school way, using primitive hand drills. No matches, no lighters. Just raw friction. Then, the meat gets passed around. Out here, nobody ever eats alone. When night falls, it's all about the stories. The elders talk about the day's intense moments, and the kids just sit there, soaking it all in.
Yes,
You won't find any
huge.
classrooms here.
The village will
Wisdom
eat well
is
tonight.
passed down by actually living it. They might not have a single modern comfort, but these people have a bond with each other and the wild that is unbreakable. While the rest of us are caught up in this crazy, fast-paced modern world, they are deeply rooted in traditions that have kept them alive for thousands of years. Let me be real with you, their lifestyle is brutal. It's grueling, extremely dangerous, and totally unforgiving. But it makes complete sense. Looking at how they live isn't just some trip back in time. It actually hits us with a seriously modern question. Did we actually make our lives better with all our comforts? Or did we just completely disconnect from what it means to be alive? And maybe, just maybe, by watching how they survive, we start realizing what we've lost along the way and what's still worth fighting to keep. Boom! Boom! Seriously. Out there in the harsh, bone-dried dirt near Lake Eyasi in northern Tanzania, one single botched hunt can literally mean starvation, or put you right on the terrifying edge of death. Yet somehow, in one of the most savage environments on Earth, the Hadzabe tribe has survived like this for tens of thousands of years. No permanent homes, no farming, absolutely zero money. And the craziest part? They face tomorrow with zero fear. Look, I didn't come out here just to see how these people live. I came because I needed to understand something that our modern world completely lost along the way. How is it that people who literally own nothing never seem to be missing a single thing? You are not going to find that answer sitting in some library. No. The truth is out here, buried in the thorn bushes, the campfire smoke, and the dead silence of the wild. Way before the sun even thinks about coming up, the Hadzabe men are already locked in and ready to go. They're gripping these rough, hand-carved wooden bows, and their arrows? They're tipped with this lethal resin cooked down from desert plants. This isn't something you can just look up. This is pure survival knowledge, whispered down through so many generations you couldn't even count them. Suddenly, the vibe completely shifts. The crew locks onto a kudu. It's this massive antelope, lightning fast, hyper-aware, and incredibly paranoid. One wrong step, and it's gone. Taking one down is super rare, but if they pull it off, it means the entire camp eats for days. The stakes are sky high. For the tribe, tagging a kudu isn't just about getting dinner. It's a total flex of skill and instinct, and honestly, sometimes it's the only thing keeping the whole community alive. The second that animal makes a mistake and steps into the open boom, the arrow flies. Fast, dead center, flawless. After tracking it for hours, the giant beast finally hits the dirt. People looking from the outside always assume these guys are master hunters because they're just jacked or super strong. But honestly, it's the exact opposite. Their secret weapon isn't muscle, it's this crazy deep connection to the earth. They know exactly when the wind is about to shift. They know exactly when the bees are going to start building homes. They even know exactly which roots you can dig up to keep yourself from dying of thirst during a brutal drought. Out here, nobody hoards their secrets. The knowledge belongs to the whole squad. If one guy lands a kill, every single person gets fed. Period. There's no stockpiling for later, and the word mine basically doesn't even exist. The only thing that matters to them is right now having enough for today. And listen, we aren't out here hunting rhinos. These guys aren't looking to pick fights with the wild. When they cross paths with danger, it happens out of nowhere, right in your face, just close enough to teach you a serious lesson. Out here, going rogue is the absolute quickest way to get yourself killed. Look at this. They crack open wild honey and split it straight down the middle. Perfectly fair. You've got kids cracking up, hands completely covered in dark ash, but their eyes are just lit up with pure joy. There's zero electricity out here. Obviously no Wi-Fi. But man, you can actually feel the real, genuine connection in the air. That meal they're eating? It only happened because the hunt was a total masterclass in teamwork, from pulling back that first arrow to the insane patience it took to finish the job. They prep the kudu right there in the dirt, spark up a fire with some dead branches, and throw the meat straight onto the glowing coals. No fancy rubs, no cooking oil, nothing. Let me tell you, it is hands down one of the most unforgettable meals I have ever seen in my life. Probably because I knew exactly what it cost to get it. I literally watched the entire struggle unfold, while the families were holding their breath back at the camp, just waiting and hoping. Packing up to leave Tanzania, my mind was just spinning. Like, have we actually progressed as a society? We literally have everything, yet we're constantly stressed that we don't have enough. We stuff our faces, throw half our food in the trash, and somehow convince ourselves that's just living the good life. These guys, they don't own a single watch, and they are literally never to rush. No bank accounts, no savings, but absolutely zero anxiety about what's going to happen tomorrow. Honestly, maybe the biggest lesson they're teaching us isn't even about survival. It's a harsh reality check. We used to be part of the wild, not the ones trying to own it. And sometimes, to really figure out who the hell we are, you have to strip it all back and return to exactly where the human story started. Crazy. Listen to this. The dirt under my boots is still freezing cold. Thick fog is still hanging heavy in the air, and these little huts are just barely peeking through the trees. They look exactly like low-hanging birds' nests. Just branches bent and forced into shape by bare hands, completely layered over and over with thick leaves. The roofs dip right down to the soil to trap every single drop of body heat, and they build these shelters literally right on top of each other. No property lines, no personal space. Out here, you don't stay warm because of a campfire. You survive the cold because nobody is isolated from the rest of the pack. You're in it together. The second the sun breaks, the guys step out. They've got these intense headbands strapped on, woven out of raw fiber, hair, and animal hide. Stuff that literally represents a lifetime out in the bush. A few of them are throwing these heavy, dark, blood-stained pelts over their shoulders. But trust me, it's not for show. It's a brutal reminder that real power isn't about talking tough. It's about the grind, the deep scars, and the endless, grueling miles tracked through this wilderness. They grab those raw, hand-carved bows, snap the strings tight, check those razor-sharp tips in the pitch black, and then just a quick, quiet click of the tongue, and they vanish into the wild. All right, it's time to move out. The whole crew slips into the deep woods, single file. Nobody's rushing ahead, and absolutely nobody is getting left behind. Suddenly, tracks in the soft dirt. Everyone's eyes drop, hands brush the ground, fresh monkey prints. A sharp, quiet click of the tongue. That's the cue. We fan out. No yelling, no waving arms around. We just know exactly what to do, muscle memory from 1,000 hunts before. The arrow cuts through the air, completely dead silent. Next up, small antelope. We push forward, still in that tight line. Every single step is slow and calculated. You don't check the wind, you feel it on your bare skin. Another sharp click means hold your ground. The next click means flank them. The second they're in range, the bows draw back. Nobody takes a premature shot. Down goes the antelope, right in the middle of a wide-open clearing.
The children
But
are
listen,
hungry already.
getting greedy out here gets you killed. There are some things you just don't mess with. We aren't out here hunting leopards just to prove how tough we are. Instead, we watch. We read the subtle warnings. We know exactly which trees that massive cat climbs to scout his turf. We know the trails he uses at dusk, when to steer clear, and when backing down just isn't an option. For us, the master plan isn't about attacking. It's about totally understanding the boundaries of an apex predator so we can stay alive. If we actually end up in a fight with one, nobody's celebrating. That is a total last resort, only happening when the entire tribe's safety is directly on the line, and we gotta climb up and drag the kill out of the branches. Out here, finding water is never a sure thing. Suddenly, we stop. Someone starts digging into the dry dirt, and bam, groundwater pools up. We drink our fill, wash off the dust. We know exactly where to dig just by feeling the dampness in the dirt, checking the exact shade of the grass, and relying on generations of memories from past dry seasons. You gotta understand, the second we finally make it back to camp, a massive bonfire gets sparked up. The fresh meat gets laid out right around the flames. Everyone sits down as one. We eat, share stories, and just laugh quietly under the stars. While the rest of the modern world is obsessed with controlling nature, using crazy tech, strict rules, and moving a million miles an hour, the Hadzabe tribe lives by one hardcore rule: shut up, listen, and adapt. Back in society, people hoard endless stuff, but somehow just end up more isolated. But right here, you only take exactly what you need. Everything gets split down the middle, and nobody gets left in the dust. Honestly, that's the ultimate takeaway. If we want to survive long-term, we have to actually act like a community and realize we're just a tiny piece of this wild puzzle, not the ones running the show. Let's slot this right in here. Hey, alright, check this out. Imagine a world with 0 laws and 0 bosses. How long do you think a group of people would actually last before everything completely falls apart? Well, out near Lake Ayasi, the Hadzabe tribe has been doing exactly that for tens of thousands of years. And this particular morning kicked off just like any other day in the bush. There are no blaring alarms or roll calls when you wake up in Hadzabe territory. Instead, the forest gently wakes them up with this faint, pale light cutting through the canopy and the lingering, biting chill of the night. As the sun creeps up, the men gather low to the dirt in a tight circle. There's no boss standing up barking orders at anyone. Nobody officially starts the day. Each guy just leans forward, quietly inspecting his hand-carved bow. You can see the wood rubbed smooth from years of use as they test the tension on the strings. They carefully straighten every single arrow, lining them up perfectly. Every movement is incredibly slow, deliberate, and second nature, like they've rehearsed this exact routine a million times. When the circle organically wraps up, they all stand and vanish into the dense trees, single file, without uttering a single word. Anywhere else in the world, a group trip like this means endless planning and somebody calling the shots. Out here, dead silence is the loudest thing. There's 0 trail marking their hunt. No paved paths, no maps, no signposts. The Hadzabe navigate by reading insanely subtle clues. A tiny patch of scuffed dirt, a snapped branch exactly at chest height, or a sudden weird shift in the ambient sounds of the jungle. Nobody has to yell to take a left or go right, but somehow, The entire squad stays locked in this perfect, unified rhythm, like they're all following the exact same invisible map. Right at the edge of the hunting grounds, there's another hunt going down, and it's just as dead quiet. But this one? It's run entirely by the Hadzabe kids. They aren't trailing behind the adults or just sitting on the sidelines watching. Gripping these tiny bows and short arrows, they fall right into line, slipping into the woods through trails they practically know by heart. They aren't going after massive beasts. Instead, they're locking in on little birds and tracks that are easy to read, perfectly matching their size and growing skill sets. Meanwhile, the grown-ups are splitting off without making a sound, pushing way deeper into the brush. They're tracking wild boar, and trust me, these things are seriously dangerous. Just one tiny slip-up, one bad move, and you're looking at shattered bones. Nobody actually says it out loud, but the tension is heavy. By sundown, they're either coming home with a feast or someone's getting badly hurt. But here's the wildest part about these kids. There's no boss, nobody is barking orders, and there's absolutely no designated leader. Every move they make just happens organically. A quick glance, matching each other's pace, this unspoken vibe, they just get it. Things stay organized not because someone is in charge, but because every single kid knows they're part of a team. For the Hadzabe, becoming a hunter doesn't kick off with a lecture. It starts with pure trust. Right from the jump, these little guys figure out exactly where they belong out in the wild, and right inside their own community, completely on their own terms. Yeah, but sometimes the intense grind just pauses for these incredibly real human moments. Like when they spot a wild beehive, everything instantly grinds to a halt. They aren't actively hunting for honey, but it's like a sweet little bonus the wilderness tosses their way. They'll whip up some smoke just to chill the bees out. Then they grab the honeycomb and pass it around right on the spot. Nobody gets greedy, and absolutely no one is hoarding a stash for later. Whatever the wild provides gets polished off right then and there, at least until everyone's totally full. Back in our modern society, whoever holds the resources has the power. But out here with the Hadzabe, the fact that nobody owns anything is exactly what keeps the peace. While the guys are pushing deep into the dense brush, things back at base camp are flowing to a completely different beat. The Hadzabe women fan out all around their settlement, hunting down wild tubers, digging up roots, and grabbing whatever fresh fruit happens to be in season. They all head off down their own familiar paths, making a beeline for the exact spots where they know food is buried right under the baked dirt. Occasionally, they'll snag a small rodent, and they'll toss it straight onto the flames, no fancy prep, no killing time. They eat the second the food is ready, taking exactly what they need to get through that single meal and nothing more. Storing stuff in a pantry for a rainy day? That's just not a concept out here, because they fully believe tomorrow is going to provide exactly what they need. There's no designated breadwinner, yet miraculously, the whole tribe always eats. They'll spark a fire right where they stand, working dry branches with skills that have been dialed in over generations. Cooking isn't some separate chore, it's literally part of the trek. The meals are super raw and simple, no special spices, no crazy kitchen routines. They just drop the catch on the dirt and divvy it up, keeping the momentum of the hunt going right into mealtime. No one is sitting there portioning out plates or making the rules. Everyone just instinctively reads the room, sharing everything flawlessly. They all just inherently know exactly when to grab a bite and when to hold back. In our world, you need laws and thoughts to keep people in line. But for this tribe, everything works because not a single person acts like a lone wolf. Honestly, the most mind-blowing part about this group isn't their insane hunting skills or how they forage. It's actually what they don't have. Zero fancy titles, no top dog calling the shots, and absolutely no justice system to punish people, yet nothing falls apart. The whole thing holds together perfectly because of one brutal fact. If the group splinters, everyone dies. It's that simple. And that's exactly why nobody has to flex any power to keep things running smooth. Welcome back to Planet Tribes. Today, we aren't just watching from the sidelines. We are diving headfirst into the lives of one of the absolute last hunter-gatherer groups left on Earth. No alarms, no daily grind. For the Hadzabe, there is literally only one rule. You hunt whatever crosses your path. This isn't some staged reality show. This is hardcore survival that's kept them alive for tens of thousands of years. So, are you ready for something totally raw, intense, and insanely liberating? Let's get into it. The second the sun even begins to crack over the shores of Lake Ayasu, the Hadzabe men are already huddled around the dying embers from last night's hunt. They're meticulously checking out their custom-carved wooden bows, putting serious tension on the limbs to make sure the snap is still perfect. But the arrows? Those are the true lifelines. and they scrutinize every single one of them. Nobody is shouting, they're practically whispering, dropping into the sharp, clicking sounds of the Zenete language to communicate. Every single motion is tight, focused, and steeped in the absolute silent discipline of elite hunters. The sun's barely peeking over the horizon, and the hunting party is already slipping out of camp. No running, no talking. Just quick, ghost-like footsteps, dodging every single dry twig that could give them away. For the Hadza tribe, this whole thing kicks off with dead cold discipline, not rushing. About an hour into the bush, one of the guys freezes. He just points down at the dirt. The tracks aren't massive, and they aren't deep. Antelope. And they're fresh laid down maybe 20 minutes ago max. They start tracking, reading the ground, like you or I would read a book. They're checking how deep the hoof sunk, how fast it was moving, the way the dirt was kicked up. They know exactly which way it headed, spot the fresh droppings, and instantly calculate how far they have left to close the gap. They bide their time, waiting for the weakest one to drift away from the herd. They want this to be quick, clean. The lead hunter draws back his bow. It's so quiet, the loudest sound out there is the wood actually creaking under the tension. And then, he lets it fly. It's a direct hit. The antelope takes off running, but the hunters don't panic. They already know this isn't going to be a wild chase. That shot was designed to shut the animal down as fast as humanly possible, completely skipping any drawn-out suffering. Period. Step by step, it's over. You see, for the Hadza, taking down an animal isn't some big macho victory. It's strictly about keeping the balance between humanity, the wildlife, and the very dirt that's kept their people alive for generations. They only hunt until they have enough. No hoarding, no stocking up the freezer, absolutely zero greed. They never take a single bite more than the tribe actually needs. Heading back to camp, another guy stops dead in his tracks. He points down at some freshly dug up dirt. They all recognize the sign instantly, a porcupine. It wasn't exactly on the menu for today, just something they happened to stumble across right at the end of the trail. Now, for these guys, seeing tracks doesn't mean an automatic kill. They actually pause and weigh it out. Do we really need this right now? These things aren't exactly looking for a fight, but man, they can hold their ground. Between the razor-sharp quills, their tank-like build, and those insanely deep burrows, getting one out is way harder than tracking down pretty much any other prey out here. When they finally manage to pull the porcupine out, it flares its quills and lets out this low, weak grunt. And again, nobody cheers. There's no high-fiving. It's 0% about a trophy. It's hardcore survival food, especially when the dry season hits, and animal fat practically turns into pure gold. Nobody's bragging about the kill. It's simply enough to keep the village fed for the day. By the time the sun starts going down, the tribe is sparking up a fire using nothing but flint and some dry sticks. No fancy marinades, absolutely zero spices. Meat is meat out here, and the wild is basically the only flavor enhancer they need. They throw the antelope straight onto those glowing red-hot coals. The porcupine goes on hold. You can literally hear it sizzling loudly, the rich fat just dripping down into the flames. Everyone circles up, passing the food, hand to hand. No big ritual, no dramatic show, just dinner in its absolute rawest form, enough for everyone, shared together, completely respecting the land that gave it. I didn't just watch a hunt today. I got to see firsthand what it actually looks like when a group of people are completely dialed in with the earth keeping them alive. For the Hadza, real freedom isn't about owning things. It's all about staying plugged into nature, being there for each other, and living at a much slower pace that the rest of us are forgetting way too fast. Hey, if you liked coming along for this ride, smash that like button and share the video. And definitely hit subscribe so you can ride shotgun with us as we track down more insane, untold stories just like this one. Catch you on the next one.